We are live.
We are in bodies.
Which leads us beautifully into the conversation that we're going to talk about. So, myself and Frida, in very simple terms, are aware of disembodied beings. So, what that means is that we are aware of the spirit world, ghosts, entities, spirits, and we have been aware of this world since we are children. And so I'm a Talk to Entities facilitator. I facilitate the intro Talk to Entities class, the beginning and the intermediate. And so we're going to talk a bit today about the Talk to the Entities beginning. I have one coming up on December the 12th. Frida is the host of that class. And we're going to give you guys some tips and tools that will allow you to transform your consciousness in regard to being spirit aware. And so how about we start where we started from, having no tools.
Having no tools. Oof.
Yeah.
You know, the first thing I remember now looking back at it is that as a kid, I was always scared of like dark windows and looking outside. And I was always like, oh, I'm afraid there might be someone looking at me. And now I know there was someone that didn't have a body, but there was someone. And they were actually really caring. Like they were, for example, like beings of the garden, and they were just looking after me. And now I know that. And as a kid, when I didn't know, I was frightened. So it's just so beautiful now to be able to receive these beautiful energies too.
Can we talk a little bit about, you said when I was a kid, I was frightened. So at the moment, there's a phenomenal doctor. His name is Dr. Zach Bush. I'm like totally obsessed with him at the moment. And he talks about a plant's ability to energetically be aware of the person who took the seedling, who planted the plant. And when the plant knows the person is within 2 kilometers of their house, let's say the person goes on holidays, the actual the electrodes of the plant, the electrical matter of the plant, it actually starts to change its vibration when they clip an EGG to it. And so for me, if you look at this, you probably weren't afraid until you learned that's what you do when you see a ghost. You know what I mean? And so one of the things that we talk about in Talk to Entities is that what is normal, average, and real, which is to be afraid. I'm afraid there's something out there. Actually, if you just landed on planet Earth today and you'd no reference point for beings that had bodies and no longer have bodies, and I came along and said, hey, there are beings who had lives just like Frida in a body, just like me in a body. And when they no longer have a body, their energy is still there. And then a lot of people have a capacity to see something out of the corner of your eye, or like notice when you look out the window a shadow, or when you walk through the woods at night, you'll hear the fairies or the trees. And so a lot of us then pick up energetically, just like the plant with its owner. We say a word, ghost, and mom or dad or whoever have a different energetic response, which is fear-based, or contraction, or compression, or anxiety, or stress, which are all energetic reactions to the topic, which is actually like ghost. And then what do you add to that, And then what occurs for us is we start to put the energy, because this is all done energetically. We then make it, I'm afraid because my mom is afraid, And so the whole thing with Talk to Entities is creating a wave of change where there is no fear and there is no judgment, because for fear to exist, there already had to be a judgment in your world, which is so cool. Like, so cool. And so you had this fear, okay, which is a judgment, and this thing is going to harm me, or whatever the judgment is that you've inherited. I know the judgments I inherited is don't talk about the spirit world, even though my grandmother was like, had massive heightened awareness of the spirit world. And so then it was like, don't talk about that, suppress it, you'll be crazy or you'll be judged, And so instead of actually you're aware and going to question about it, which is consciousness. Yeah. So can you talk maybe about what changed for you when you learned that fear was a judgment and a distractor implant? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I learned to ask questions instead and not react, but just be like, oh, okay, there's something. What is it?
Mm. Mm.
And after I took the Talk to the Entities beginning class, I had the question of, hey, okay, is this an entity? Yes, no. No? Okay. Then it's something else. Yes? Oh, what else is possible?
So let's give people that first tool. So, because if you're watching, start with that. So if your kid sees something out of the corner of their eye, or they say there's a monster in the room, what if you just started with, is this an entity? Is this an entity? The kid could be aware of a grandpa that passed, or a grandmother, or I know the house that I'm living in right now, the man who owns it is walking around it a lot by night, And so you can have entities that like have ownership on houses and they decide it's theirs and they're going to be there forever, like the movie The Field, a very old movie. So first tool, is this an entity? Okay. And then what would you say is, I want to say, like, what has really transformed your daily living in regard to moods, attitudes, behaviors, energetics?
Well, that question actually changed so much. Just acknowledging that it's not all mine, my body, my symptoms, I'm sick or whatever. So many times my body is showing me something which seems like a cold or whatever it might be. And then I ask a question, is this an entity? Yes. Ah, okay. And then I have more tools now to know what's required to have ease with it. Yeah.
Thanks so much for saying this. One of the things that I did have before I came to the first Talk to Entities training, which is 12 years ago now, 2012 in Cork. In the summer, I think it was June 2012, I did my first Talk to Entities class, and I actually used to have panic attacks and get anxiety. And looking now, 12 years later, I didn't have the anxiety and the panic all the time. I would only have it in certain areas. And it was entity awareness. I was aware of ghosts that had died in trauma, a car crash, plane crash, war, maybe, in a violent occurrence. And so nobody ever asked me, Frida, if it's like, is this with you all the time? And if someone had said, is this with you all the time? And then I would respond, no, it's only with me when I go here or when I'm here. And then, so for me, one of the things that because I had a definition that you see spirits like the way that you see him, the way you see me, which is, we don't sense spirits like that. The spirit world is real. You are aware. And now, how can you improve your life with disability and capacity? And so for me, I would sense the spirit that was talking to me, their energies that were stuck, I think a big question for people watching this, how do you want to be treated when you die? And how do you want to die? But this is all part of Talking. It's a huge topic.
Yeah. I was just like, oh my God, this is like a whole world.
It's a whole, and we're just on the edge of possibilities when you do the beginning, And so if someone had said to me, hey, Rachel, how can it be yours if it's not with you all the time? Or who are you doing this for? It took me quite a while to recognize the way that I'm aware of the spirit world. And so we've put out a beautiful video that you created. I'm so proud of it, Frida. It's so gorgeous. And one of the things I really would like people to know, empowering you to know what you know, the way that I experience the spirit world is very different. I can hear a lot of head chatter, or I can have symptoms of anxiety, and then, is this an entity? What am I aware of? recently I went for a walk by my house and there's a pillbox. And I don't know if you know this, in World War II, the British soldiers would hide in these pillboxes. They would come up the canals, you know. And if there was helicopters or bombers, and they would go into these, like, it's actually like a pillbox, but it's a concrete version of it made for people to hide in, soldiers. And I'm out walking one day and I'm like, number one, what is this? Is this an entity? Yes. What am I aware of? I turn around, I see the pillbox, I do some research. And so for me, I wasn't experiencing, oh, there's, you know, Declan or Johnny or Michael or Luke, who was a soldier. It wasn't like that for me at all, or Seafridge or whoever. It was more, I would become the feelings and the sensations of the spirit that was, you know, stuck to that place, stuck to that land, stuck to that house, stuck for whatever reason. They're stuck in what, unconsciousness and anti-consciousness.
Yeah.
And then I would run the tools. Here's the basic entity clearing tool we're going to share with you guys. Who are you? So the principle is that you're an infinite being. In other words, you're not just Frida Sophie Schertz in 2024 in Germany. You're an infinite being. Who were you before that? You've had other lifetimes. Who were you before? You've had other identities. You've had other nationalities, you know, and who can you be in the future? And this is like such a beautiful clearing, and you just run it. Is this an entity? And then you run the clearing. Who are you? Who were you before that? Who were you before that? Who were you before that? So you're reminding the entity, you're being the consciousness that they require. Who can you be in the future? And take all your magnetic imprint in. That's all your baggage, your stories, you know, the hundreds of stories. We have a new clearing statement, access consciousness clearing statement. And so right and wrong, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100s, shorts, boys, povids, creations, bases and beyonds. I'll put it here afterwards. And so then you contribute to that being having more space, having more consciousness. And instead of going into compression and contraction and creating more reaction to the spirit world, you're creating a wave of change, which is one of our targets with taught entities, a world that includes all beings.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you go.
Yeah, and I just want to say it's actually such a gift when you use the tools. Like, this stuff really is expanding my world again and again and again. Yeah, like, because the beauty is, like, when you, for example, run a clearing statement, so many times I receive this like wave of gratitude, for example,
Me too.
from the entities, and it's just like,
Yeah.
it's more ease for my body, and they're grateful. Like, how does it get any better than that?
Mm.
So it's just, yeah, it's just wonderful and fun. It can be really fun too.
So much fun. I mean, it is the thing that, you know, everywhere you think you're wrong, you have a miraculous difference. And so for me, this is one of the areas that I thought I was wrong, you know, to be aware of the spirit world. And now it's the capacity has improved my life. You know, the house that I'm living in, that was brought to me by, I found that through entities, that I found so many, and you have this, Frida has this massive seeing capacity to find things. Entities bring her paintings, and like myself, you know, paintings and
Gorgeous. Yeah.
gorgeous gifts, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would love you to have these tools. If this is something, it was a negative experience for me until it became something that was beneficial and useful.
Mm-hmm.
And you can ask entities to contribute to you. You know, there's entities out there that are like beings of consciousness, and you can ask them to contribute. And so we start on December 12th, 8th, 12th. And we would love to have you along. And for me, it's one of the greatest choices. I genuinely, for me, I thought I was going crazy when I would hear entities' voices in my head. Turned out that I'm not crazy at all, that the spirit world is real and true, and I had to get to work, you know. Yeah. And will we give people the job clearing as well? So an entity might have a job. They might have a job to look after a grandchild. So they may be stuck to the house, to the building, or they might have a job to, protect their land. What were you? What were you before that? What were you before that? What can you be in the future? And what was your job? What was your job before that? What was your job for that? And what can your job be in the future? Take all your magnetic imprinting and all your oaths, vows, fealties, communities, commitments, binding and bonding contracts. Right and wrong, access consciousness clearing statement, good and bad, pot and pock, all 100s, shorts, boys, poveds, creations, bases and beyond, so that any beings that are stuck to a house, stuck to a land, stuck to a country, stuck in a fixed point of view can actually move on. Beautiful. Anything else?
Yeah, actually, I just want to say that like you're just brilliant with this too. Like because you're not because like you're just such a space of kindness and caring and allowance with everyone I've ever seen, and I've been on so many calls with you by now, and it's just wonderful. So thank you.
And allowance is wonderful. Allowance is a tool of access consciousness, and it's where you're not projecting on the person you're not expecting them to be a certain way, or you're not projecting them to perform in another way. And you're actually receiving them as they are, and you're not looking at them to be different. So check out, there's a beautiful book written by the creator of access consciousness, The Gift of Allowance. Beautiful, Gary Douglas. And I know that I'm very grateful for you for being in my life. And I also am going to say allowance of my awareness of that there is a spirit world and is true and real has been a game changer for me, because I had a lot of dysfunctionality when I wasn't acknowledging the beings that were around me, what was going on in the lands around me. I would be physically sick in some lands, in Croatia and Japan. And so I really had to utilize this energy, and it has made my daily living so much more beautiful and so much greater. And people come for me from all over the world, through a grandmother, I'll see a pair of earrings. Did I tell you about when I was in Florida? I was in Florida, and I was just like thinking about like Hungary, Budapest in particular. And I'm in Fort Lauderdale. I walk into the store and I'm looking for a new coat, a good winter coat. And I find this lady, and it's so cool. And she had these earrings, and I was like, "Oh, I love your earrings." And she's like, "They're my mother's earrings." I was like, "Oh my God, they're beautiful." And I said, "Is she dead?" And she said, "Yeah." She said she was from Budapest in Hungary. I was It's not linear, folks. You really got to trust. Why would you not trust what you're aware of, and stop rejecting your abilities? Beautiful. Thanks for being here, lovely Frida. And we hope this contributed to you. And how does it get any better than this? And there is a wave of change with inclusion in regard to the spirit world. And you don't have to be afraid. You can just be present and work with what is. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Happy Sunday. It's December 1st. Happy December 1st. And see you all soon. Bye. Bye.